it's just across the board at Ohio State. There's an expectation when you come here, you're coming to be first or second rounder, regardless of your position. If we don't win games and championships, they're going to find a new coach. Well, if you're not a first or second rounder, then this probably isn't the right place for you.
Coach, did you get a nipple ring?
Oh,
we didn't want him to leave, and he didn't want to leave. I mean, that took a lot of long conversations and tears.
Support for the show comes from Amazon. There's things you plan for, like hosting a killer tailgate, and then there's things you can't plan for, like a surprise thunderstorm warning the night before said tailgate. No worries, Amazon's got you covered. From planned essentials to unexpected needs, Amazon's got a comprehensive selection in one convenient destination. Shop Amazon and save on essentials. Save the everyday. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Not Just Football. I'm Cam. There's Hayden. And today we've got a massive episode today. And we are joined by national championship from my alma mater, a guy who has brought so many first-round picks, coached them up the right way. Coach Ryan Day, thank you so much for joining us for that.
No, great to be here, man.
Man, let's jump right in. I was recently there, and I brought my son around, and I got the chance to watch the practices. My former OC in Arthur Smith was out there grinding, coaching his butt off. What's it like having him and Matt Patricia as your OC and DC? And, have they gotten in any wars yet?
No wars yet. It's been great though. I think there's a couple things here. I think there's a lot of reasons why, as I looked at it just even a couple of years ago, where I kind of wanted to go down this path, not knowing exactly where it would go or who would be available. I think that's probably the thing during this process that's been a challenge is we get done with our season usually, into January, the year before January, 20th. So the hiring cycle's kind of already gone through. So it can get a little tricky. But one of the things for us is that we're always trying to find ways to differentiate ourselves in a day and age when now with NIL and everything that we can do across the board in college football, we always have to find advantages and ways to sell our program even more outside of just NIL. And certainly stability is a big part of that when we talk to recruits. So many of these guys want stability. They want development. And so how do you do that? Well, to me, having two coordinators who are former NFL head coaches with their pedigree was a great way to do that. So that when someone walks into our program, schematically, they're being taught like they, played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, just like Aaron Rodgers, same system. So that when, these guys have an opportunity to go on to the next level, they have a chance to walk into some of these meetings with NFL personnel and talk their language. And they get to see them in the scheme. They get to see, how they've handled themselves and then listen from guys who have been in the NFL about how they may compare to somebody that they've worked with before. And then the second part of that is now that we're into the playoff system, wanted to have guys who had been through that before as well, that know how to scheme up, into the playoffs. It's very different when you used to just play one game for a national championship after a long break. Than when you have these playoffs. And so they have, history on that and certainly have experience. So I think all of that, was important when we hired both those guys.
And then you had an OC who also was in the NFL before, who was also your running mate in New Hampshire for a long time in Chip Kelly. Speak on that relationship and y'all's path together.
Well, it started when I was real young in Manchester, New Hampshire, where I grew up. And my wife and I both grew up in Manchester, New Hampshire, and so did Chip. And so Chip used to go to my father-in-law's basketball camps. He used to be at my grandparents' house. I was friends with my uncle. So we knew of Chip well. And then when I got into high school, I thought I was going to go to the Ivy League. I was kind of ready to go to either Brown or Cornell or one of these schools. And I'll never forget, he called me in one of the old payphones in the cafeteria, and someone says, there's a coach on the phone for you. And I picked it up, and he said, why do you want to go to an Ivy League school? They don't even play in the playoffs. Don't you want to go to a place that plays for a national championship? And so in my world at that time in New Hampshire, that was a big deal. And I think he kind of knew how competitive I was. And I committed right then and there. Didn't tell my family, didn't tell anybody. And so I did. And one of the things that he and I talked about during the recruiting process was I knew I wanted to coach even at a young age. And he was like, well, if that's the case, I'm going to make sure you're ready for that. And so here's how we're going to do that. Well, what we didn't realize is that during the fall, my GPA was like a 1.8 because all I would do is go to and game plan with those guys. And I would sit in their meetings and literally just talk ball all day. And then in the spring, my GPA was like a 3.8 because I had to get back to class and get the while playing noontime hoops with all the professors and all the coaches.
Nice.
Spent enough time in the weight room, but that's just a side note. But what it allowed me to do was just really dive into the X's and O's early on. And what we did in my first year of starting was he would change the offense every week. So we'd go from a run and shoot offense to a veer offense to a wing tee offense. We would run anything. So one week we ran the trap option from the gun and threw it 6 times. The next week we threw it 65 times, like just to give you an idea of like how it would go. But I loved it because every week it was a brand new challenge for me. And I learned about it. One week we ran the Air Force offense. One week we lined up and, the tight ends and the tackles were outside with the back. So there was just 3 guys inside. I mean, it was just crazy.
Oh, the duck formation.
Yeah. And then after that year, we started going no huddle. And then by the time my senior year was there, we were trying to run as many plays as possible. So we were running like over 100 plays a game, just trying to wear people out. And then he took that to Oregon, and then the rest is history. But the cool thing was me reconnecting with him when he was the head coach of the Eagles, then with the 49ers, and then obviously him coming back with me at Ohio State.
What was that conversation like with him asking him to come be your OC?
Well, I talked to him first when I was first going through the process. There was really 3 people I had in mind at the time. And I can say it now. It was Bill O'Brien, Josh McDaniels, and Chip Kelly. Because, again, I wanted guys who were former head coaches in the NFL who had experience in the playoffs. And talked to all those guys, had great conversations. And then at the time, he wasn't in a position where he could leave based on just timing and things like that. He knew some of the challenges he was dealing with and everything. But he's a very loyal guy. And so he wanted to be very careful about, how things were handled there. And so we hired Billy O'Brien. But he was only there for like 2.5 weeks, and then the Boston College job came up. And how those Northeast guys are, they're crazy about going home. But he had his family there and his son there, and so understood that. And so then when I called Chip back again to say, hey, we may have another opportunity at this, things had then aligned a little bit more for him, was able to make it work. And I talked to him about the team we had and said, we had a chance to win a national championship with this group, and went through it all. And he got really excited about that. And then the rest is history.
How did Urban get you to come to Ohio State?
Well, that's another good question. So he and I worked together in 2005. Well, I worked together. I worked for him. I was a GA, just literally just doing whatever it took to get things done. I tell the story all the time. I got married in June on a Saturday. I flew back to Gainesville on Sunday, got off the flight, got in a car, drove, and went to camp because we had a high school camp that day. And he comes running over in his golf cart, and he's like, Dave, where you been? I'm like, I got married yesterday. And he's like, well, where the hell have you been? I said, well, I hustled back. And then he just kind of took off in his cart, half smile on his face. But I learned a lot that year, and it was great. And I always stayed in touch and, knew how great of a coach he was and all the success he had along the way. And so just wanted to be a part of that. And so I got a call, I forget exactly when, and we just started talking about things and what we did and how it was going to work out. And, it wasn't guaranteed, but things as the season started to shake out, he just kind of felt more and more like there'd be an opportunity. And then by the end of the season, it was ready to roll. And then when I got that call, again, I think it was maybe in December, I was on the next trip to Columbus.
And then getting promoted to head coach. It's a match made in heaven, but
39 years old, coach. You had to be shitting your pants a little bit there. It's the Ohio State, right?
Well, Thea, if you think about, so when I was at Boston College for 9 years, and I tell the story all the time. I was the offense coordinator. We played USC at home. I think we were 28 and a half point underdogs, and we beat them. We beat USC at home in a great game. It was called the Red Bandana game. And we had like 500 and something yards offense. It was just a magical night. And I'm like, man, we did it. And the next day in the Boston Globe, it says the Red Sox beat the Yankees or something like that. And I'm like, God dang it. Like all the work we're putting in, I felt like I needed something a little bigger. And that's when I went to the Eagles with Chip. And at the time I was thinking to myself, well, if I'm going to do this, I kind of need to have something that I'm an expert in. I kind of studied all the people who had made it far in this game. And to me, it was quarterback play and the pro passing offense. And so I just dove into that, like everything I possibly could when I was with the Eagles, and then when I was with the 49ers. But like when I was there, like not everything was great. And so I'm moving my family, a couple times every 2-3 years. And there was a lot of moving around. And, we're from a small town in New Hampshire. And I think sometimes, my wife would look at me like, what are we doing? This is insane. And so when we got here, our second game, we're playing against Oklahoma in Baker Mayfield. We get beat. And I remember that drive home saying to myself, like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Like, it just seems like we just can't get things to going. And then, a year later, I'm the head coach at Ohio State, or a year and a half later or whatever it was, because, you go to 18 and then I was the head coach for those first 3 games. That was kind of a crazy situation. And we kind of managed that year. And then in 19, obviously was named the head coach. So that all happened really, really fast. And I always knew I wanted to be the head coach, but for that to be your first head coaching job, certainly there was a lot going on.
And then you've developed the top tier quarterbacks, CJ Stroud, Kyle McCord, Will Howard. It's a tremendous run of quarterbacks, and you got Julian Sayin now. What does it take to be an Ohio State quarterback?
Well, when I first got here in 17, I would meet with a lot of recruits and their parents and their families. And, Braxton was more of a runner. JT had done some running, and so, and I think just when you looked at the history of Ohio State, there was some really good quarterbacks along the way, but like they were trying to figure out like, all right, how do we fit into, the system, and how, if you're going to prepare us, are you going to prepare us for the NFL, or how is this working? And so I just remember saying to myself, like, okay, I said this early on, like I want to differentiate myself. And I say this to every coach who's in the building. So I said, when James Laurinaitis was here and he's working on it right now, he's getting there. And I told it to Brian Hartline when he came, I tell it to all these guys, if you're at Ohio State, it should be your position, you. So, I took that challenge very seriously. I wanted to be quarterback, you. And so it started with JT that year in 17, and he completed his first, I think, 16 or 17 passes to end the Penn State game. We're down 3 scores in the fourth quarter. And it kind of built from there. And then Dwayne threw 50 touchdown passes and was a first rounder. And then Justin came in and CJ came in. And my biggest regret with all those guys, I wish I could have somehow figured out a way to get them back for their fourth year, because, like selfishly you want them here, but also like you just want another year of them to just mature and grow, because as once you get into that league, it's a lot. And those guys are really talented dudes, and they're all doing great. But like, you just wish some way you could have had them for that fourth year, but they move on and time moves on. And then we had Kyle McCord and Will Howard and now Julian Sayin. And, people look at like, the quarterbacks and then obviously the receivers, they kind of go hand in hand together. And I would say, if you bring the wide receivers, if you bring the quarterback, the wide receivers will come. And so that two guys worked hand in hand, and certainly Brian had a big hand in that as well.
You talk about those moments where you wish you would have done things or wish they got back. What's the one game that you wish you could have back?
The 19 Clemson game. Yeah. Yeah. That one in the Peach Bowl.
Is that the fumble game, Coach, where there was a questionable fumble call? That
was definitely a fumble, by the way.
That's the game, correct? Just want to make sure that's the one.
Yep. That one, and then obviously the Peach Bowl against Georgia. Those 2 games to this day. You remember the losses. You know what I mean? The wins kind of just come and go in their relief, but those losses haunt you. And because I felt like both of those teams were good teams, and if we were able to move on to the next game, we would have been playing LSU in Joe Burrow, which would have been just a monster game, which would have been great. And then the other year we've been playing TCU. So, that's but that's where I got the mantra of leave no doubt, because it can't come down to one call. Either of those games. You think about the shot on Marvin, which would have been a huge play that they didn't put the flag on, where that was a personal foul. We score and go up to 2 scores and that game's over. Or the multiple calls that happened in the 19 game, but like nobody cares. So we can't leave it up to one call. We have to leave no doubt. And that was the whole philosophy behind that, coming off of coming into the 24th season, was like, no, don't leave it to one call, because if you leave it to one call, you deserve to lose. And that was the whole idea on in the national championship game on 3rd and 11 of throwing it up to Jeremiah and being aggressive late in the game.
Be honest with me, though. Did you know Joe Burrow was going to be that good?
So, Joe, first off, is extremely special in a lot of areas. He's extremely competitive. I say to this day, if any of those guys want to get into a 3-point competition or a tire pull with Coach Mick, they're going to lose to Joe Burrow. I say it all the time. Now, Justin Fields would have been right there with the tire pull. Would have been right there in the 3-point competition, but Joe just – he had that special way about him. And, he broke his hand that year. And then Dwayne stepped into the rivalry game and played really well in that game going into the season. So he had a little momentum going for him, and it was extremely close. We didn't say to Joe that Dwayne had beaten him out. We said he was ahead of him. And we just wanted to make sure that we were, communicating that to him, even though we didn't want him to leave and he didn't want to leave. I mean, that took a lot of long conversations and tears. And when he decided this is what he wanted to do, I helped him. We talked, Cincinnati and some of the other schools, and obviously LSU in the end was it. And I remember when we played in 18, it was actually the 3rd game that I was the head. We played TCU in Jerry Jones, and LSU was playing. I forget who they were playing. I'm pretty sure that was what it was. They were showing Joe's game on the Jumbotron, and everybody in that place who was Buckeyes was cheering for him. Mm-hmm. And to this day, he'll come back and live with us. And so, his parents are great. It was just one of those situations that, we were all happy for him, but we were hate to see him leave, obviously.
Yeah. And the closest I've ever been to a national championship was my freshman year. Never won it, but you guys made it to the mountaintop and won. And explain that moment of finally reaching the mountaintop, finally, ending the game with, the Jeremiah Smith pass, Jack Sawyer, my little brother now, but him getting that strip and sack. Oh no, that was
that's a score, right?
Texas game, but
Texas does be a semifinal.
Yeah, explain that moment of finally reaching that everything you wanted.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to when I was named the head coach, as a first-time head coach, you don't get the benefit of the doubt. And I think, for some people, well, why is he now the head coach when he hasn't coached anywhere before? It's Ohio State, which is understandable. And so when you lose games like we did in 19, or you lose the game in 22 in the Peach Bowl and those types of losses, and then we lost the rivalry games, and it adds up on you. But I think what people want to see is how you're going to respond when things get really, really hard. It's like they're testing just to see what you're made of, what the foundation's made of, what the culture is made of. And I think the way that we responded and played in those 4 games, and then really went on a 16-game run, it including the first game of the year against Texas, which was the number 1 team in the country with a freshman quarterback, and obviously last year didn't finish the way we wanted to. But I think the point is, as Buckeye Nation was evaluating it all, you could just tell there was not only a sense of pride of how we responded, but also like, okay, these guys aren't going anywhere. And when things get really hard, they're gonna grit their teeth and they're gonna hang in there. They're gonna ball up their fist and swing as hard as they can. And that's kind of the only way I know life. That's the way I grew up. When things get hard, and everybody wants to just count you out, you just got to keep swinging. And that's what, these people have in me, and that's what they have in this program. And that's what we're going to do, because nobody cares that NIL has changed the landscape. Nobody cares that we didn't get a call. Nobody cares about what goes on in other areas. But the bottom line is you have to perform. You have to win every game. And the expectations here, because people still kind of laugh about it. They say, you want to win the rivalry game? We won the national championship. Well, we didn't win the rivalry game, won the national championship last year. This year, we won the rivalry game, didn't win the national championship. You got to win them all. And I think the one thing about this entire program, and that's, starts right here, is, we embrace the expectations. Like no one's making excuses for a tough schedule next year. No one's making excuses for all these different things. Like, that's it, man. That's it. And that's not changing around here. It's never going to change. And you win with people, you win with great culture, and you swing as hard as you possibly can. And you embrace all of that, because now I've been here going on 10 years. My family knows it. I know it. And it's who we are. And it means more to us than anybody.
Coach, you talk about the rivalry. Cam has always told me about what that rivalry really is. I'm curious, though, as a coach, I know that's the one game you guys have to win every year. How do you go, though, manage the season when you know that game's important, but you also got to win that's right in front of you, too, to win the one that's next week, too, right? So how do you manage that balance?
Well, what you try to do is you try to put metrics in place that you can evaluate on a week-to-week basis that ultimately are going to be used in that last game. And so, winning different situations, winning different things. And so whether it's a turnover battle or rushing yards or whatever those things are, we come back in on Sunday and say, okay, here are the things that we have to win in the rivalry game. And so here's what we're going to focus on during the season. And if we do those things, by the way, it's going to help us win the game at task at hand. But we have to continually build to that point to get ready to play in that. It's not just going to happen. It's these bricks and foundations that get built and so we actually have bricks. After every practice, I give a brick to one of the players. They go over to the platform, put the brick down. And then that either that foundation is going to hold up when the storms come or it's not. You don't all of a sudden just show up to that game and think you're going to play. So that mindset helps us.
Coach, I've got Will Howard and Jack Sawyer now on my team. Explain the relationship with those two guys. They give me a hard time sometimes, and I know they've given you a hard time, but what is it like having those guys around?
Well, one, fun-loving dudes, like just guys you want to have a beer with. I mean, they were just great guys. Remind me of like guys back home. And the funny thing is, like, I'm a coach, and I kind of saw them like that when they were seniors. So they were always fun to be around. But fierce competitors, both had different stories with me. Will was, came here. As an older guy in 1 year, and we became pretty close pretty fast just because, what, we shared during the recruiting process was getting played out in real time. And, kind of shared with him how hard it was going to be, coached him hard, but the rewards were going to be endless. And that happened. And it was fun to watch he and his family enjoy that run. And I love the way he just handled the adversity. He was just a dude. And then Jack was the first guy that ever committed to me. So he was a young guy, and it was my first recruit ever as a coach. And then he brought everybody together. During COVID, he would bring people over his house. He was one of the first guys to say he was coming back after his junior year. He was always a leader. He just brought guys together, and he was the ultimate Buckeye. Like, he grew up in his backyard, wearing Buckeye, jerseys and playing in the backyard. And that's what he always wanted. So to see him have that moment in the Cotton Bowl, to see him win that championship for his home state, I said he's never going to have to buy dinner again in Columbus.
Well, we had him on the pod, and I asked him, because this was a big topic at the time. Oh, no. Coach, did you get a nipple ring?
Oh,
I mean, I kind of thought it gave me some street cred there for a second, but unfortunately, no, I'm not that cool like this. I don't know.
I had to bring it up. That was one question. But I know with one thing you did do, and we gave Will a lot of crap for it. You showed his commercial from Dr. Pepper in the team meeting. How did you get that all in order?
Man, it was bad. I think. But he's a guy that has such a great sense of humor, and he's so secure in himself that he could do it. I mean, we give him hard time in the Cotton Bowl. It was fourth and 3. He runs Q power and is wide open and literally just like trips over the 20-yard line. So in the film room, we're like, you got to watch out for the 20-yard line. And he's like undefeated. He's like leading the league in tackles, and everybody gives him a hard time for those kind of things. But he's that kind of guy, because he can laugh about himself, pretty self-deprecating. And so we had to put that one up there because that was like the most cringy commercial of all time.
Support for the show comes from Amazon. We're gearing up for our favorite time of the year. In just a few days, the draft is coming to my hometown, the City of Champions, Pittsburgh, PA. Shout out to the Yingers who will be tailgating all day and all night. I'm here to tell you that it takes more than a bag of chips to make a party. Only a rookie would make that mistake. And now I want to hear from Hayden. Tell me what your ideal draft tailgate party looks like. Tell me the setting, who's getting invited, eating and drinking, and what's the overall vibe.
All right, we're inviting all the boys, the wives, the girlfriends, whoever you got involved in your life. We're inviting everybody to come with it. We're going down to the draft stage near Pittsburgh in the city where all the vibes are going to be. It's going to be super high. Everybody's going to be hanging out there. But the big key is bringing the essentials. Pace. Bring some water, Cam. Maybe some food, but water is the crucial thing to bring. What are you bringing?
Well, I'm bringing you, obviously.
Oh, thank you.
I'm also bringing my wife. Bringing the guys. Got to bring the team. Maybe a question mark on the kids. But we're going to have the wings. We're going to have the dogs. We're going to have the pierogies because we're down in Pittsburgh. We might even have some kielbasa if you're feeling lucky. But we're also going to have some water. We're going to have some beer. And we're going to have a great vibe. I'm thinking locked in, but you also got to stay relaxed because it's a long time. A good tailgate is ready for the weather, rain or shine. That means umbrellas, rain jackets, tents even. And you can't just show up with snacks without bringing drinks. Or you won't even make it to the end of the party. Bottom line, a tailgate takes preparation. And you can find anything you need on Amazon. Great savings, low prices, and an unbeatable selection. You find what you need on Amazon. Shop Amazon and save on essentials. Save the everyday.
Coach, I'm curious. I remember the first time I met you was at the draft in Detroit with Cam, and we had talked to you for a minute, and you were like, we were talking about the receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr.'s coming up, and you had said to both of us, we have a guy in camp right now. He's a freshman. He could be better than all of them. And I remember walking away thinking, looking at Cam thinking, he's full of shit. There's no way somebody's going to be better than Marvin Harrison, better than Wilson, better than Jackson Smith-Njigba. You were right. Jeremiah Smith is every bit as good. Who is the next guy you guys have in line there? Because it just seems like you guys just keep funneling them out.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting now, just the way that you build the roster. You think about I think at one point we had 6 first rounders on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a Mecca.
Yep.
It was Marvin. It was Jackson. It was Olave, and it was Garrett Wilson. So I think 5, all on the same team. Pretty unrealistic nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So, we do have some really good depth right now in that room. I'm interested to see kind of how that room all shakes out, but I do think there's some young guys coming up. If I start putting them in that category, they can get some big heads. So let's just make sure they built the strong.
But it's crazy you say those guys, but then I think about the Ibukas, the Carnell Tates, who's going to be a high pick this year too. It's just like there's so many guys, and I don't know. It's like all 5 stars. So I don't know how you do it. You do an incredible job developing the wide receiver position, regardless of what star they are.
Well, it's about the evaluation first off. I think about. And it's at all positions. I mean, you think about this year alone. I mean, a lot of people talk about the wide receiver position, but look at, you get Sonny Styles, you have Arvell Reese, you have Caleb Downs, Caden McDonald. All these guys are going to be possible top 15 picks.
Mm-hmm.
They're all juniors. But to your point, I think when you look at, first off the evaluation, Brian Hartline had a huge part in all of that, and evaluating and building these relationships and developing these guys, and he did a great job. But I think it's just across the board at Ohio State. There's an expectation when you come here, you're coming to be a first or second rounder, regardless of your position. And that's it. Just like, if we don't win games and championships, they're going to find a new coach. Well, if you're not a first or second rounder, then this probably isn't the right place for you. And that's just the reality of it. And so understanding that on the front end, and that means there's a lot of places you can go. Maybe Ohio State's not it, but there's just a certain, like when you walk into that room and there's some guys already, who are freshmen who have that mentality that we're seeing even during spring practice. Now they got a long way to go. It doesn't happen overnight, but having that mentality, I think, is important.
Coach, there's one guy that I've known since he was a little kid. And when I found out he was going to make his way over to Ohio State, I was ecstatic. And Caleb Downs. I saw him like 2 weeks ago. And he was like, you probably don't remember me. I was like, oh, I remember you, dude. You were one of the most humble guys, but you know football and you know where to be on every position. Speak on what Caleb Downs brings to any team in the NFL.
Yeah, similar to you, I saw him in high school, and it was probably the best high school player I've ever seen. in one game. He was all over the field, playing multiple positions, and almost won the game against a really good team. And during the recruiting process, he decided to go to Alabama, and play for Saban. And that was like a really emotional FaceTime. And then when Coach Saban decided to retire, he FaceTimed me again after going through the recruiting process again. I thought I was getting the same call. He put his hands in his face and he set me up. And I'm like, oh my God, he's doing it again. I said, no, I'm coming this time. I took the phone to football. But ever since he came into the building, you just knew the seriousness, how much he loves football. And I think his, like you said, his work ethic, his ability to recognize plays, diagnose plays, his combination of playing physical and tackling in the run game, but coverage and anticipation in the back end. And then the other part that we're already challenging our guys with this spring that we're missing is the communication, getting everybody in the right call, making sure everybody's on the same page back there. He will have that immediate impact on the field, communicating, get everybody in the right call. It's like having a coach in the field, but also just setting a standard of work ethic and what it takes and being the first guy in the building, the last guy to leave.
You have a chance to have 4 first rounders in the top 10. That'd be the most, I guess it'd be third in school history. And joining Michigan State in 1967 and Notre Dame in 1946. What would that moment mean for Ohio State and you guys moving forward?
I mean, to continue the great tradition of Ohio State. I mean, this has been going on for a long time. I think we have more first-round draft picks than anybody in the history of the draft. So this is not something that's new. It's been going on for a long time, and we want it to continue to do that. But it's an example to hopefully our players and recruits who want to come in that if you come to Ohio State, this is the expectation. This is the blueprint. A lot of people in recruiting talk about they're going to develop. We actually have the results to show you. We have the testimony, and this is it. And I think, again, what's noteworthy is how young these guys are. I mean, I hate it because I wish they were all coming back for their senior year, and that would make me sleep better at night. But it's all part of it, and proud of those guys, and it's everybody involved with it.
Coach, I want to move on to NIL, and I'm so curious how you handle it now because it feels like you got to be in the portal, but you've also got to retain your roster. I know you've been outspoken about it. Tell us your philosophy on NIL and how you handle it as a team.
Well, it all starts with recruiting and then developing and then retaining. So that philosophically is what we believe in at Ohio State. When guys leave early for the NFL draft, or maybe somebody were to transfer out, that's when we have to fill the holes with the portal. But when we bring somebody in the portal, we don't just like grab bag. We like to really do our homework on these guys. And when you look at the guys we brought in, we pretty much knew who these guys were. And actually, Caleb had a big hand in this year's portal class because he played with Earl Little, James Smith, and Quay Russo at Bama his freshman year. Brandon Ennis played with Earl Little. And so Terry Moore played under Matt Guerrieri at Duke. Kyle Parker played under Cortez Hankton at LSU. So these are guys that we knew when we came in, when they brought them into the building, because we're not just going to bring anybody in. Culture is very strong. Again, going back to, we're not allowed to have a bad year. So having the culture stay strong is important. So we want to fill in those holes with portal guys when appropriate, knowing that we're going to have a veteran team. Or when we do have a veteran team, gives us our best chance to make that run late in January.
I know Jeremiah Smith talked about this, that he was being pursued by multiple teams. What do you say to him to make sure he stays?
Well, I think the first thing is, and this is the whole recruiting process. So all of our position coaches and Mark Bantoni, who's our GM, I watch everybody and I do the evaluating, but it's their job ultimately to say, this guy can play football here. It's my job to make sure he fits the culture. And a big part of that identification is who's the sphere of influence. There's a lot of talented guys out there, a ton. Some of them aren't the right fit for us because maybe their parents are too focused on money or playing time right away or those things. If we have parents and now agents who are great communicators and are all on the same page and understand what our priorities are here and core values in the program, then we have a chance. And this is a great example. what we said we're going to do for Jeremiah, we followed through with. And I think there's a lot of trust there that's been built over the last 3 years. So when all that went down, it's just a bunch of grown people getting together and talking it through, and then saying, okay, this is what we expect. This is what you expect. We shake our hands, and we both have to follow through on our end. And that's exactly what happened. And, if you want to bring in folks in your program that, are focused on, going to the most money or all those different things, well, then, you're going to have an issue somewhere down the line where people are going to leave for more money. Jeremiah, I think he said it before publicly, could have gone other places probably for more money, but he was thinking big. And I think that's the thing for some of these guys who are the elite, because we, again, take pride in saying that we think we're the best at developing the elite player, the elite talented young player. We take a lot of pride in that. But those guys have to think big. If they're thinking small time and if they're just going to chase what's right in front of them, then, they're going to miss the big picture down the line. And Jeremiah has always had great counsel with him, but he's also he's got a lot of wisdom for a young age, and he knew what he wanted, and he thought big.
You speak on counsel. Have you had any counsel from Coach Tressel at all?
Coach Tressel has been great, and every year our relationship grows more and more. He's come to practice. He has spoken to the team before. He's given me some of his materials and some of his thoughts. Very few people have walked in these shoes, so. It's, between Urban and Coach Coop. I'm sure you saw him the other day when he was over here. He comes to probably half of our practices. Those guys have been great, all of them. And Coach Tressel certainly is one of them.
What was the best advice Urban gave you when you took the job over at 39?
Well, he gave me a lot of advice. I think one of the things that he said that as time has gone on, when someone tells you something, especially somebody, who's been through it before, and they try to share some wisdom with you, you listen, but sometimes you don't always understand it until time goes on. And one of the things that he shared with me is this job's going to be isolating. Mm-hmm. I didn't quite understand it at the time, but I do now. It is. And it's something that, you have to be aware of, and your family has to be aware of. It's just, your life kind of goes, from normal to not normal pretty fast. And so it's something that, you have to keep our priorities really intact and find balance. And what I learned, from Clint Bruce, who's, a former Navy SEAL, is he talked about how balance is not equal distribution of energy and time, because we're trying to become national champs in football. Like your time is going to get eaten up. But what it is it's an investment in faith, family, and friends. It's building high ground for hard times, because hard times are going to come. And when that happens, you're going to have to rely on those three things. And so, there's no time really to do. Have I played golf before? Sure, but there's no time to play golf. Like, we're not going, going bowling with the boys. Like, you're not doing normal stuff. You're literally with your faith, your family, and your friends, and then you're with football. And so, that's been it. And trying to make sure that, you stay as normal as you can along the way, which, as you know, Cam, is not always easy, but it's something you have to make sure is a priority.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. You and your wife, Christina, have been pretty open about mental health, establishing a fund with a nationwide children's hospital dedicated to it. Why is that so personal to you?
Well, I think the first thing is, I lost my dad when I was young, and so that's always been something that, has been a part of my life. But I think for me, when I had an opportunity to have a platform that Ohio State has to offer, just like I tell all of our players, you can make a difference. And when it's all said and done, we all want to make a difference. Mental health is something that affects everybody. And I felt like for the community to see these big, giant human beings who everyone thinks has the world in the palm of their hand show vulnerability, and recognize the fact that mental health is something that we all need to be aware of, could bring credibility to an area where a lot of times there's shame and people don't quite talk about. But there's different levels to it, and it's like building resilience. And I think, I lost my dad when I was young, and it was a heavy topic. And so, like, every time it came up, it was like, whew, we need a drink after this one. But like, what as time went on, I realized, like, no, this is something that we can make sure is a positive thing. It's about building resilience. How do you get stronger And the bench press, you bench press. How do you get stronger running? You run. And so how do you get stronger mentally? There's a lot of different levels of mental health. So I'm not getting into like the chemical imbalances, but just in general, we have to face resistance and we have to become more resilient. And so what a great example of that was really last year when everything was kind of falling apart. We hung in there and we became stronger for it in the end. It's just a great example of it. And I think for all those people who are going through difficult times, if you're just willing to hang in there, you can use the adversity as a way to get stronger. And so that, is part of the message that we try to make sure we're focusing on.
One thing I will say I've loved that you've really tried to incorporate, it's kind of something that used to take place back in the day, but you've been big on trying to bring the alumni back. And I think that's very huge. What does it mean to have alumni guys like Bobby Carpenter, who has never left the facility at all, or having James Laurinaitis on staff, or Brian Hartline, guys who have been prominent players at Ohio State, but now are featured in your program?
Well, we just had our huge day on Saturday. We had over 200 players at a practice, and for me, this is their program. And the reason why we all have this opportunity is because of the players that have come before and the coaches that have come before, everybody. And so this is their home. This is their pride. This is who they are. And I want to make sure that they feel that. And so, I don't know everybody who came before. I know the guys that were here when I've been here, but we try to invite those guys back as much as possible. And it's an open door. It is. And I try to make sure that I get that out there as much as I can, because I don't know all of the former players, because there's so much pride in Ohio State that there's so many guys that want to come back. And so, we have that open door policy that come through, get around the guys. Maybe there's some advice along the way that you can give because you've been in their shoes before, because the brotherhood's strong, man. And if we're going to sell the brotherhood in recruiting, then we have to live it.
Coach, I'm curious. I've always wondered this with professional athletes, so I would love to hear your perspective as a coach. You have a son, RJ, who's a class of 2027 quarterback. How do you go about coaching him? Are you hands-on with him? Do you kind of let his coaches do it with him, or how do you go about it?
Very hands-on. As time goes on, more hands-on. I will say this, just being a dad, it's like I always kind of said, I'm just going to be hands-off. I'm going to let it happen. But the truth is that if you don't advocate for your son, I'm not sure anybody's going to. So there are a lot of crazy parents out there, but if you don't get in the middle of it, like your kid's going to get the raw end of the deal. So you gotta get in the mix sometimes. And that's just in general. That's not the problem at high school, but he's doing great. It's been a great experience. Probably the coolest thing about being a college coach is that he gets to be a part of what you do. I mean, if you're an insurance agent, you're not having your son come through the Woody every day. I mean, he's here right now, getting a lift in or something, going to games, being a part of it, and then me being a part of his experience and watching him play has been great.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine being that close to my son. Like, my son came to practice and watched, and all he was doing was looking at Jeremiah Smith. I remember catching the ball, and it was like an easy, like, he grabbed it out of there with one hand, stepped his foot in. Everybody thought it was out of bounds, but like, I couldn't imagine having my son around, the game and being that close. But I guess that happens. Like, I guess I'm in for it as well with my little one too.
It's great. And I think that's when you surround your children with high achieving people, like osmosis, it just kind of, it rubs off on them, and they see how they act. They see how they move. They see all the different, they don't miss anything. And, I say that, my wife and I raised RJ, but a part of him got raised by the Woody. He was around all those great players coming through, and I'm proud of the type of people that we have in this locker room that, he was in there even as a little guy, and those guys would put their arm around. It wasn't just the great players either. I mean, it was the guys that you wouldn't even know of who would just say different things to build him up, to make him believe that he could be a great person and a great player. And one of the cool things about being a coach, and certainly at Ohio State.
Last question for me. I think Hayden has something, but I would love to know what your favorite jersey is in all the Ohio State jerseys. There's so many different alternates and everything. What is Ryan Day's favorite jersey?
Yeah, I like the grays. Yeah, I do. I mean, the whites are good when, and, I like going on the road, and everybody, all the recruits like the black ones, but no, I like the grays, man. There's just something about those, man. They're just sharp, and I'd go with those.
I like those too. I unfortunately, my senior year, we had a scarlet with those grays, and it was hard to look at. I'll say that, but yeah, I've always been jealous, man. Like, damn, I wish I had those black jerseys. I wish I had those grays. Those are sharp.
Yeah.
I'm very jealous when it comes to those.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Coach, we like to end our show with a game where we play with all of our guests. It's called Ask Cam Anything. You get the floor to ask Cam whatever you want and however many questions you'd like. He's got to answer the question, and you can ask him about anything, life, football, family, whatever you want. He's got to answer it. So ask as many questions as you'd like, Coach.
Am I at a time limit, or I can ask?
You can ask whatever you want, however much time you got.
Favorite memory at Ohio State?
Cool.
Favorite memory. Well, I know it doesn't count, but the Sugar Bowl we won my senior year.
It doesn't count.
Well, they took it away, which makes no sense. I don't.
What about the trophy, though?
I do it.
Most memorable play.
Most memorable play. It was a fumble recovery. I think my sophomore year, we were playing that team up north in the big house. Recovered it in the end zone. And this guy right here, he's a fan of that team. So after that game, I made sure he saw me have a touchdown for the first time.
Coach, he called me immediately after and asked if I watched. Of course I watched. Okay. It was really not great. He was 4-0 against us too. It was bad. So.
I know it's more than one, but if you could say there was one thing that has allowed you to play in the NFL for as long as you have, what would you say it's been?
I think the thing that has allowed me to play this long is learning how to take care of my body early. That was one thing Tress really stressed. After a game the next day, you have yoga, you have your workouts, you have your pool, you have your massage, and kind of just creating that habit that way. And so when I got to the league, it wasn't like everything was brand new to me. It was stuff I was already doing.
Interesting. Favorite stadium to play other than at home?
Oh, Penn State, Happy Valley at night. Yeah. When you get the white out and you shut up everybody, that is one of the best feelings in the world.
Man, no, that's great. That's great. All right, one more. Something off the wall. Favorite place to if you could pick one place to go for a vacation, where would it be?
One place to go. Man, I'm just someone who likes quiet and doesn't have to be super crazy, but either the Bahamas or Hawaii. I like a good beach trip. I like getting away. I like being next to the sun and taking in the family. So it doesn't have to be anything outrageous, but if you can go to Bahamas or Hawaii, I'm for it.
It's good living right there. That's all I got.
Hey, Coach, if you need I'm pretty sure you've got all the vacation spots too. I'm sure. He
told us he doesn't get to vacation. He can't even golf, Cam. He's not going on vacation. Okay?
He's going on vacation, shirt off, nipple ring showing, having some fun.
That's right. Vegas, baby.
Well, Coach, I got to say, this has been incredible. We appreciate you coming on, spending some time with us. But thank you so much. It has really been a pleasure to have you on.
No, much respect, man. Anytime. Great to see you guys. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Good luck this year.
Thanks, man.
All right, that's our episode of Not Just Football. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Don't forget to head over to notjustfootball.com and get your tickets for our draft party at Tequila Cowboy, April 23rd. But also, we are doing a separate event and live show at Heinz History Center, April 24th. So make sure you subscribe for those. Make sure you sign up for tickets. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. Thanks again to Amazon for supporting this episode. Whether you're trying to stay on top of everyday essentials or on the hunt for the unexpected need, you'll find it on Amazon, probably for cheaper. Spend less on markups and more on the perfect tailgate setup. for any weather. Shop Amazon and save on essentials. Save the everyday.